Welcome to the It's in Queens podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the only podcast that focuses on my borough of Queens. This podcast comes to you thanks to the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council, which work tirelessly to showcase our borough as a destination full of unique experiences, cultural gems, and opportunities for everyone who lives here, works here, or visits from near or far. Queens is not just the most diverse borough in New York City. It's also home to an incredible array of nonprofits, large and small, that support individuals and families in countless ways. These organizations provide vital resources from job training and housing assistance to arts programs and advocacy, strengthening the fabric of our communities. This week, I'd love to shine a spotlight on one of these impactful organizations, Witness to Mass Incarceration. This organization is dedicated to advocating for the rights and dignity of individuals who have been previously incarcerated. The organization addresses critical gaps in reentry services by offering tailored programs that focus on job training, housing stability, and economic empowerment. And recently, the organization announced an exciting partnership with the Queens Economic Development Corporation to deliver specialized job training and support programs right here in Queens. To learn more, here's founder and executive director, Evie Litwok. Evie Litwok, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
It's so nice, and thank you so much for inviting me.
I'd love to start off by finding out a bit about your personal journey, if you could share that with me.
My personal journey was rudely interrupted in 1997 when, as I was ready to retire and do philanthropy, I was arrested and 12 years after my arrest convicted, incarcerated twice, and twice in two different federal women's prisons, and spent time in solitary confinement. And that altered not only the course of my life, but my thinking about my life and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
And given those experiences, I'm curious, and I always ask, that I always ask people this in my full-time job because I note that I work with the Fortune Society, so I hear a lot of stories about the journey people are on, but about how much their lives changed in coming to understand issues such as mass incarceration and understanding the problems within the criminal justice system and the need for change. Talk a little about how your experience shaped your vision, because then I want to get into the founding of this organization, which is very important.
If you don't mind, I want to go back one step.
100% go back.
Okay. So I want to introduce you to me, which is I'm a senior. I'm 73 years old, formerly incarcerated Jewish lesbian, and the child of two survivors of the Holocaust. And those intersections played a huge role in both the arrest, the trial, the incarceration, and the reentry. And it informed a lot of my thinking because I grew up with people who came to this country with $2.50 and had just lost all of their family, they suffered and they had a shared suffering. So I grew up in a community that suffered a great deal, had a shared suffering, and worked together to uplift each other. And that informed what I knew I would do. From the moment I hit prison, I knew that I would walk out of prison and spend the rest of my life trying to help other people who I knew were coming out, but who I felt were more marginalized, more isolated, and didn't have a community base the way the Holocaust survivors did. I can keep going.
Oh yeah. Oh, and this is a conversation, so you can keep going if you would like. But what's interesting is, some people have these realizations, but then they don't move forward in terms of creating something that is going to help others. They want to, and maybe they volunteer, maybe they find some way to help or support others, but you created a nonprofit organization, Witness to Mass Incarceration. Talk a little about that evolution, and then I really want our listeners to know what your organization does.
Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit, if that's okay with you. I am a baby. I'm 73, so I'm a baby of the gay rights, women's rights and civil rights movement. So I spent my youth um, being an activist. So when I walked into prison the first day, I knew that despite thinking of myself as a fairly left or radical person, um, it was nothing compared to what I planned to do once I saw what was going on in prison. And to be very truthful, I went to prison twice because my conviction was overturned the first time, but one count remained. And I went through a lot, 20 years of experiences. Not, I was only in prison 2 years, but once I saw what not only prison, but what the system was doing to people, I knew without hesitation that the world needed to know that you are not just losing your freedom. The world might think you're being punished and the loss of your freedom is the end of it, but your life is at risk in prison. Your life is you're at risk of sexual violence, you're at risk of physical violence, there's no medical care, people are dying there, there's nothing talked about. You try to go to the dentist, and I was in prison in 2010 and I wrote a slip asking to get my teeth cleaned, and they said, "We can help you, but we're currently seeing people from 2007." So if you have a problem, you get your tooth pulled with no Novocaine. So there is so much abuse in prison. And if you're put in solitary for any reason, which I was, um, you are, it affects you mentally, physically, and emotionally for the rest of your life. So prison, whatever serenity you have, whatever path you start your life on, even if it's a path you're lucky enough to have, which puts you in a position to really make something out of your life, that gets taken away from you. And you have to understand, the minute you're arrested, your world collapses. The government takes your money away. The people that have been in your life for 40 years or 20 years or 50 years, they're gone because the association with someone who's been arrested is something they don't want to have, even if you're an innocent person, they just don't want that association. You lose your support networks. And while you're in prison, you may or may not have family to support you. So when I came out of prison, I went into prison at age 60. I had 30 years work history, including 12 years on Wall Street, 10 in running nonprofits. So I expected to be able to get an entry-level job someplace. Sent out 200 resumes, got no response, and spent 16 months homeless and penniless. Now, part of that is due to the fact that all the systems, reentry was harder than prison, and prison was a nightmare. But the reason why reentry is worse than prison is because the reentry model that has existed for the last 30 to 40 years is very transactional in nature. I can go to 6 huge organizations whose names I don't need to discuss, and I'll get a meal, a MetroCard, a resume. They may teach me how to talk to in an interview, and maybe give me one or two places to interview, which are usually inappropriate. Um, they sent me for construction, and I was 70 years old, not a good idea. And then you're done. So the organizations aren't built for transformation. So when I so lots of things came to my mind when building witness to mass incarceration. Number one, I knew I was going to do that within hours of being in prison as soon as I was strip searched, because the humility of being naked in front of a stranger and having them touch you to see if you brought in any paraphernalia is too overwhelming. And you're so traumatized by this experience that I knew I had the skills, the history, the knowledge, and the commitment to social justice all my life. So now I was going to focus it intentionally in a way that would be of help. So witness is, and I'm a very pragmatic person. I knew that if I could not get a job with the number of skills I had. And I was incarcerated with 1,300 women, most of whom I was the age of their parent or grandparent. So if they didn't have my 30 years of work history, they were not even going to stand a chance, which is the condition it is. And to be frank, the only job I was able to get was at the Gap, standing for 8 hours on my feet. And if I chose to sit down, they fired me because you're not allowed to sit. So we face reentry that's unfriendly. Yes, you can get very temporary help, but reentry needed to be redesigned, and it needed to be redesigned by people who went through the experience, because the services that exist really aren't the ones we need.
So
We
then talk a little about some of the services you provide and how people find out about you, because I want people to take something away from this if they know someone in their life who could benefit from it.
well, the because I could not find a job, what I did, and I realized that witness was not going to be a hobby or something I did on the side on top of my job. It was going to be my job. I started looking to see what if there are other formerly incarcerated led businesses or services and what listings I could join once I started witness. And I discovered there's no listing of us anywhere, not at the SBA, not at any chamber of commerce. I'm talking about, 10 years ago right now. So the first thing I did was build an online platform for listing formerly incarcerated led services and businesses. And I did it nationally. So I have about a little under 2,000 listings, and in New York, 110. And that was just to identify, because I knew that I wanted to identify, promote, and network the formerly incarcerated led businesses and services, because I knew that we could recreate what I grew up with if we knew each other and we started to help each other. If one person needed t-shirts made, go to one of us. Try to keep things in-house. So I not only built this map, which is going to be turned into an app and given to people while they're still incarcerated or when they come out, so that they can look for services that are very friendly to them, which is us. Second, I do events. I do one in Queens in July, around the middle of July every year. We call it Suitcase Sunday. We're about to do our fifth annual. It's supported by Speaker Adams, and she's a major support for us. And I invite formerly incarcerated businesses for free to have a table, sell their goods and services. I invite elected officials to come, and I invite the public to come. I do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need to know each other. Number two, it gives them a day in which they can make a lot of money and maybe pay their rent. And three, I don't think that policy changes minds. I think that proximity changes minds, and that people's images of us as dangerous or, something to be nervous about is immediately let go of. If you're talking to someone who's smiling and engaging you in a conversation, you realize they're a human being, or you remember they're a human being and they're okay. And I think that interaction is crucial.
And there's so much stigma out there. And I'd love for you to talk a little about the message you hope this organization sends to people who engage with your work.
Um, well, number one, welcome home the stranger, which is not only my personal faith value, but I think that the less we use the concept these people, the more the concept of these people. And in order for us to have a good world, a safe world, a comfortable world, we have to be a we. And the message I have is know the person you don't understand. You'll be surprised at how much you have in common. They have a mother, they have a family, they have children. We have a lot more in common than we have that's different. I do want to add that we started in addition to working with already existing businesses, Queens Economic Development Corp partnered with us for what I think is a very important project. And we have provided us with office space. we are training formerly incarcerated and system impacted people on how to go into the tailoring industry. We're putting them into we're spending 2 years to put them through a pre-apprentice, apprentice, and then an incubator program so that we take them through everything they need to be in business. So that in 2 years, in a very short period of time, they can actually earn their own living. And that we can do that because QEDC got a grant from the Department of Justice to create formerly incarcerated entrepreneurs and partnered with us to do that.
How many people, as you're speaking, I'm wondering, you've changed a number of lives. How many people annually do you normally work with?
Well, directly, the numbers are that we work with directly and indirectly are different. So, when we bring, there's going to be 25 students. But you're not really just impacting those 25 students, you're impacting their husbands, their wives, their kids, their family, because you're giving them a chance and it really changes the outlook they have for their life. The number of people that are on the map is, and the number of people that look at them as a resource, look up and actually call them, I don't know. I would say probably several thousand each year between indirectly and directly, but I'm really more focused on the direct. And that's going to be a smaller number because you you have to put a lot into taking 25 people who have never had a business and teaching them how to do everything from talking to someone to walking into a store to learning the skill to understanding financial literacy and the books and budgeting. You're spending 2 years giving them an education so they can shortcut having 10 years living in transitional housing.
I'm sure you hear a lot of stories from people whose lives have been changed as a result of your work. Any specific, any example, an anecdote you'd like to share?
So when I came out of prison, I was given $30 and a Greyhound ticket, from West Virginia, and I came to Port Authority, a place I had known and been to a million times. When I arrived there, I started crying. I was alone. My mother wasn't able to help me, and I had no relationship with my brother, and that was all I had for family. And I knew in that moment that I didn't want anybody to come home alone. I also didn't come home with anything. I had no computer, no phone. So we created something called the Suitcase Project. And probably one of the most memorable things that we do is to meet someone as they walk out of prison so that they don't come home alone and to give them a suitcase that has a phone. It's very important to not be isolated. You need a phone. A computer you need to find a job. You need to be able to communicate. Or if it's COVID, watch a movie. You need some items. And then money for toiletries, food, and some clothing. So we give them a suitcase, we put this in the suitcase, and we give them, members of my synagogue gave their time for the next year or two to each person that wanted their help. So now, 10 years after doing not a lot of suitcases, I am still getting calls from each of those people. In fact, I got a call a week ago from the first person our name is Chastity, that we gave a suitcase to, telling me, I miss you, I love you, I'll never forget what you and your community did for me. So that, knowing that she'll call me sometimes on New Year's Eve to wish me a happy new year and tell me she's thinking about me. That for me is just heartwarming and full. It means a lot to me. It means that I've helped another human being. I don't think there's anything as emotionally valuable or as fulfilling as helping another person.
Yeah, Evie, as we look ahead, any new initiatives or programs in 2025 that you would like to discuss? Because I want to make sure people know about the diversity of programs and opportunities you have.
Okay, so we are primarily focused on economic mobility, stability, leading to economic independence. I do not focus on policy reform or I am an advocate, but I don't. I focus on the very concrete issue of helping people to earn a living. And I connect people with other people, but only if you earn a living can you be housed and food secure. So our programs are predominantly trying to expand the number of ways. So for example, there is one person who was in one of the cohorts we've been running cohorts in Queens for about 2 years, and he is a brilliant designer. So I said, how are you selling your items? And he said, oh, in a duffel bag on the street. I said, no. I said, I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to I'm going to help you market your business so that you go to another level. And in exchange, you'll make a donation to Witness. We'll make an arrangement. So things grow out of this, partnerships grow out of this, or people who would never be able to be introduced to someone that may help them. I am constantly introducing people to other people who I think can help them advance. So it's not only what I do, it's who I know, who I meet. So if anybody in your audience is in a position to help us, then they should definitely get in touch with me. I'm at witness2massincarceration.org, but I have no problem giving out my phone number.
And you knew that I was going to ask for that website, so I appreciate that. As I get ready to close, is there anything else, Evie, that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes, one thing, which is uh, because we're a nonprofit, we're always trying to raise money in ways that we're sick of doing. So, meaning grant writing every other day. So I try to create projects that have some meaning. So we produced our first computer game, which we hope to make a market in. The first episode is the story of my strip search, and computer gamers. I've shown it to people, and my goal was for people to be disturbed. And when I ask people how they feel after watching the game or playing the game, they say, I'm very disturbed, and they can't forget it. So I try to create things that are meaningful to different generations in a different way. And in addition, we also, because of my love of dogs, we created dog hoodies. And the reason I say that is if anybody needs a hoodie for their dog, go to mybooboo.org, which is our other website, because again, I'm trying to create streams of income or ways that we're not reliant on spending 50% to 70% of our time on trying to raise money, because we don't know what issue is going to impact us next week. We don't know what's going to be. I'm talking about anywhere in the world. And so the more self-reliant you are, the better. So Witness, even though we rely on grants and funding, is working hard to try to make ourselves a little bit less reliant on those things and create more things that both educate and give us a stream of income.
And on that note, Evie Litwok, I want to thank you so much for appearing here this week and wish you much success with Witness to Mass Incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you and Happy New Year.
The initiative that Evie had talked about will involve 3 programs: the art of tailoring, baked and pastry arts, and sewing machine technology, and each is going to be staffed with industry experts. They will provide hands-on training in specific trades, including tailoring, culinary arts, and sewing machine repair. Participants will be guided into sustainable careers with a support system that includes additional training in business essentials like marketing, tax preparation, and digital skills. Now, because this is the It's in Queens podcast, we love to share with you about things that are happening in Queens. If you're looking for something else to do this month, well, we have you covered. That's where Rob Mackay comes in. He's with the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. And every week he brings us details on some of the more dynamic events that are happening in our borough.
Hi, Jeff. It's another great week in Queens, but this actual segment has to be about Branford Marsalis' quartet. They're giving a concert at Colden Auditorium on Sunday, January 19th. Everybody knows Branford's brother, Wynton, but Branford himself is very accomplished. He's won 3 Grammys, and he's achieved jazz master status from the National Endowment for the Arts. His quartet cooks, too, with extraordinary energy and telepathic interplay. He plays the saxophone, by the way. The concert is set to begin at 4 p.m., and there's a special program to honor Martin Luther King's legacy at 3 p.m. New York Urban League President and CEO Arva Rice will deliver a keynote during the program. Colden Auditorium, as you probably know, is located at Queens College, and the school does an annual MLK Day commemoration. It's all great. I've been to a bunch of the past ones, and I'm going to this one. I hope to see you there too, Jeff. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That's just a few of the things that are happening in our borough. The place to go to discover everything that's happening is at the It's in Queens website, and that website address is itsinqueens.com. And by the way, if you are interested in business-related news, how to help your business or friends or family members, well, head right over to the QEDC's website. That's at queensny.org. And when you're there, sign up for their newsletter. And when you visit any place in Queens this month or throughout the year, snap a photo or two and share them with us. Make sure to use the hashtag #It'sInQueens when you post on Instagram or X, because your photo could become our photo of the week. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and that's it for this week's It's in Queens podcast.